Okay, picture this. You're holding a living, breathing entity right in the palm of your hand. Now, how exactly do you hit the pause button on its life? Like, how do you completely freeze it in time for months, maybe even years, without actually killing it? And what happens to that living thing if it isn't, properly put to rest? It is an absolute biological tightrope walk. Welcome to this explainer. For all of you focused learners joining us today, we're going to look at the preservation of orthodox seeds. And we're not just treating this as some mundane agricultural chore. No, this is a high-stakes survival mission. We have to perfectly manipulate an environment to keep these tiny little lifeboats alive against some seriously incredible odds. So let's dive right into this by remembering one crucial thing. Seeds aren't just inanimate objects. They aren't pebbles. As this quote beautifully puts it, they are the living, breathing link between two generations. They are alive right now, literally just waiting for the exact right moment to spark into a forest.
All right, part 1, the science of seed sleep.
To actually keep these orthodox seeds alive, we really have to understand their physiological demands. The technical biological term for the state we want to achieve is called quiescent. Basically, it means the seed is just taking a highly regulated nap. It's temporarily resting. It can't absorb nutrients or water through roots, and it obviously can't produce energy via photosynthesis. Instead, it is relying entirely on its own internal, stored resources just to maintain its basic life functions. And honestly, this brings us to the core problem of our survival mission. If a seed remains too physiologically active while it's in storage, it burns through those stored resources way too fast and produces metabolic waste. Think of it like leaving a car engine running inside a closed garage. If it doesn't shut down, it's literally going to poison itself with its own exhaust. So the fix here is that we absolutely must force the seed to shut down its engines. But how? Well, by drying it out. For orthodox seeds, we have to carefully reduce their internal moisture content to a very, very specific window. We're talking between 4 and 7%. This drastic drying forces the seed into a safe, deep sleep, completely halting that toxic metabolic waste production. Next up, let's look at temperature, because this completes our perfect resting environment. Once we've dried them down to that 4 to 7% moisture mark, we ideally want to cool the seeds down to around 5 degrees Celsius. Whether that's in a cold room or refrigerator, this 1-2 punch of extreme dryness and cool temperatures completely halts their physiological activity. Moving on to Section 2, defeating rodents and insects. Okay, putting the seeds to sleep, that's really only half the battle. Now we've got to defend them from invaders. First up, the big macroscopic threats. Rats and mice can easily gnaw their way into wooden storerooms or sacks, and once they're in, they multiply insanely fast. The solution here is pretty straightforward: physical exclusion. We're talking wire mesh walls, heavy metal or glass containers they can't chew through, or traditional raised poles. And as a nice little bonus, those raised poles also keep out unwanted snakes. I mean, snakes don't eat seeds, but you definitely don't want to bump into one in a dark storeroom, right? Now here's where things get a bit creepy. The truly insidious threats are insects. Unlike some pests that really need damp, humid conditions, insects like bruchid beetles uniquely thrive even when our seeds are perfectly dry. They're often unknowingly brought into the storeroom right alongside the harvest, where they just proceed to breed and hollow out the entire seed lot from the inside out. So to defeat them, foresters actually use a really clever, methodical 3-step process. First, flotation. Infested seeds are usually lighter and float to the top of water baths, so we just skim those off. Second, we use cold storage to literally freeze the insect's activity so they can't breed. But the ultimate weapon, that's step 3, sealing the seeds in a carbon dioxide or CO2 environment. And I absolutely love the biology behind this. It's brilliant. Insects are animals, right? They can't just switch off their metabolism. They need oxygen to respire. So when we flood a storage bag with CO2, the insects simply suffocate and die. But what about our precious seeds? Well, because we already dried them down at that 4 to 7% moisture level, they are completely quiescent. They aren't respiring at all, so the CO2 doesn't harm them one bit. Now, if you don't have CO2 handy, there are chemical insecticide powders. But honestly, nature provides its own incredible armory. Powerful aromatic plants, things like ginger, oregano, garlic, and onions, act as fantastic natural repellents. Their super strong odors completely override the scent of the target seeds and chase both insects and rodents away. You're essentially giving the storage room a serious case of garlic breath to keep the whole lot safe.
All right, let's jump to Section 3, fighting off fungal attacks. We've beaten the mammals, we've stopped the insects, but now we are facing the deadliest threat of the bunch, fungi. These guys don't just eat the surface of the seed, they act like microscopic assassins. They send these biological structures called haustoria, which are basically tiny fungus roots, deep inside the resting seeds. They ruthlessly absorb the seed's nutrients while simultaneously pumping out seed toxins that will absolutely destroy our resting aeration of trees.
Because fungi absolutely require moisture to survive, our primary defense here is that extreme dryness we established earlier. But to actually maintain that dryness long term, we use what we can call the nesting doll strategy. You don't just dump your perfectly dry seeds into a giant bin. No way. You place the dry seeds inside closed plastic bags, and then you place those bags inside an airtight container. Now you're probably wondering, why all the separate bags? Why not just one big bag? Well, imagine you have a massive airtight container. If you just had loose seeds in there, every single time you pop the lid to check on them or grab a handful, humid ambient air rushes right in. By keeping them in separate individual bags within the container, you protect the bulk of the seeds from that moisture. Plus, if one bag does happen to get a fungal outbreak, it's completely isolated. It can't spread like wildfire through the rest of your stock. And finally, Section 4, Practical Seed Storage Solutions. So how does all this intense biology actually translate to the real world? Well, here's a quick summary of everything we've covered so far. You've got your 3 major external threats over on the left, exactly how they launch their attacks in the middle, and our precise environmental or physical remedies on the right. Whether we're talking about raised poles for rodents, CO2 for insects, or extreme dryness to fight off fungi, it all boils down to total environmental control. And what's really amazing to me is that achieving this level of control doesn't always require millions of dollars in fancy tech. Sure, major centers use high-tech walk-in cold rooms and massive refrigerators, but foresters all around the globe achieve the exact same physiological state using purely natural methods. Ground caves provide perfectly stable, cool temperatures. Clay pots with tight lids inside dugout earth stores, they can perfectly replicate that dry, dark, resting environment needed to keep the seeds safely quiescent. Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. When we go to these incredible lengths, literally manipulating moisture down to the single digit, controlling ambient temperature, suffocating invaders with modified atmospheres, are we really just storing a seed? Or are we in fact actively engineering the survival of the future forests of our planet? It's a massive, absolute responsibility, all wrapped up in a tiny, quiet package. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.